that does get pretty lonely.
What happens once you break a Guinness World Record?
I want to go and ride it 10 days.
Was racing in the tour ever an option, or
I was using like daily.
your best mates with the Chinese chief of police now? Okay, here we go. Jack Thompson, Jack Ultra-Cyclist Thompson. I think we need to work on your nickname a little bit. He joins us from Spain. Jack, we appreciate you getting up nice and early, mate. How are you?
I'm good, boys. I'm good. It's good to be on here chatting with you, and it excites me hearing that Aussie accent, the thought of coming home.
Have you fully converted, like you're living in Spain? Can you speak Spanish or?
That's a funny one. So we're living in like a little part of Spain called Catalonia, so they speak their own language. And I'm learning it slowly, but it's difficult. Like you've really got to commit to a language, and I'm probably like 80% committed. I'm not 100% there yet.
And it's going to be to the point where you learn how to do it. And if you live anywhere else, it's going to be completely useless. So that's a good
Exactly.
one. Now, I've slipped one little question in there, but we asked the same question to all of our guests first up. BackChat powered by Fleet Network this year. Jack, we appreciate you coming on, and we know that you have covered some amazing feats on the bike. You're an ultra cyclist. You hold Guinness World Records. You own multiple world records in the ultra cycling range, and we know how good you've been on the bike. But the first question we always ask is, we want to know your greatest sporting achievement, not in your chosen sport. Now, as we've said, you're a great cyclist, but just for this moment in time, we don't really care. We want to know what you can do off the bike. I mean, Dan Const,
we can all ride a bike.
My co-host, I mean, we've both recently, I'm taking up a new sport in fistball, which has been quite an accomplishment for both of us.
Might be popular in Spain, actually, fistball.
Dan Const is like 6 for...
No, do you know what? I'm changing it to beating you and Hammer in the 40-meter dash.
You're a fast man. I can take that.
Sprinter.
I was an under-9 hurdles champion before I got on the footy field. Jack, what have you got for us? Your greatest sporting achievement, not on the bike?
I think mine goes back to the athletics track as well. In year 4, I think it was, I was runner-up champion boy.
Nice.
At the primary school, and I remember, that was a pretty good feeling getting the red ribbon.
Runner-up. That's so close. Who was the champion boy?
I think his name was Jordan Stanley. I don't know if he still exists or where he's at, but he was a great little runner.
It's so funny. Anyone who's runner up knows exactly. It's like, what's their name? Oh, I don't know. It's Jordan Stanley.
I could even picture him.
Oh, that's good, mate. Oh, that's very good. I'm really looking forward to this chat, mate. And some people tuning in might not know all about the world of ultra cycling or marathon cycling or whatever you want to call it, long distance. You've reached some incredible heights within this, but we do also like to go back to the start, a bit of your journey. You're a Perth boy. Tell us a little bit about what's life like growing up for you, Jack, here in Perth.
Yeah, look, I had a pretty good upbringing. I think Perth's a bloody good place to be raised and go to school, and we've got the beaches, and we grew up surfing and doing sort of Perth things. Went to Scotch College, so I was a private school boy, and don't hold that against me. I didn't really enjoy school, if I'm being honest. And I guess given it's November and it's there's a big sort of talking all things mental health, I actually realised from a pretty early age, it was about 13, my parents first picked it up, that I sort of suffered quite badly from depression. And I guess this sort of shaped my childhood a little bit. I was cast as a bit of an outsider, and I just didn't really feel welcome at school. I was a little bit different. I didn't really enjoy socialising. I didn't really enjoy hanging out with the other kids, and I couldn't work out why. And it was because I was suffering from depression. So, this was, I had a couple of turbulent years there at school. I actually started as a little triathlete, and what I found was that having the swimming, the riding, and the running each day, it gave me a bit of a focus. And so I had these 3 miniature goals that every day, I was, at the time I didn't realise, but now looking back I do. It was like, I've got to do this, I've got to go for a swim, I've got to go for a ride, or I've got to go for a run. And it kept me in a really good space. And anyway, this sort of shaped my childhood. I was this little sort of triathlete. And then, turned into an adult and went to uni. And yeah, I don't know if we want to jump straight into that, what happened at university and sort of my battle with addiction, or if we want to sort of stay on the topic of childhood.
No, we can do it all. I mean, talking about depression straight off the bat, is that something that you've had to learn to live with? I'm assuming that doesn't just go away because you know you have it. What sort of things have you through the journey, both as a child, young adulthood, and where you are now? How's that sort of journey been coping with that?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that's like, well, for me, like you don't cure it. It's always sort of there. And you have sort of bouts of feeling good and then you have bouts of feeling bad. And I think the important thing for me has been sort of working out what triggers it. So for me, it's stress. And also like that sense of not having control of what you're doing. So when I could sort of keep things more controlled, my depression tends to disappear. And there's things like sport. But basically what I'm trying to say is like developing a coping mechanism or a series of coping tools, tricks, toolbox. That's kept me in a really good headspace generally. And so, yeah, it's one of those things that doesn't go away. Like, I'm sort of feel as though I've got everything in the world right now, but tomorrow I might wake up and, I might have 4 or 5 really bad days for no particular reason. That's just life living with depression, and I think it's more people suffer from it, more people experience the same thing than most people would imagine.
How did you at 13 start to understand that that's what it was? Because I feel like that's a pretty mature thing to recognize that that's what you're going through, and not just be like puberty and teenage angst and like everything else that you've got going on at the time.
Yeah. So I started developing these like tics, and they were crazy things, but they were like I had to do them. I couldn't not do them, and it was like I had to blink my eyes twice, pinch my lips, and do this it was like a ritual. And if I didn't do it, I'd convince myself that something bad was going to happen. And I remember we were on a holiday somewhere with my folks up in Asia, and I couldn't control it. Like it was just going crazy, and I was just like, I was manic doing these crazy things. And at this point, they said, look, we need to take you to go and chat with someone. And I think it was thanks to my parents. They sort of picked up on it. I thought I was losing my mind. Sort of these obsessive compulsive tendencies. And they booked me in to go and see a psychologist, which at the time I was petrified of. I thought, as a 13-year-old kid, the word psychologist scared me. And to actually think that I was going and seeing one was something that I was like, wow, what's wrong with me? Why am I going and doing this at this age? Like, are the other kids at school doing it? And eventually, I went and spoke with this guy, and it was probably one of the best things I ever did, because it became somebody I could trust, somebody that could help to guide me. But I wasn't seeing them every day, and they weren't judging me. And I felt like a really strong bond with this guy, and I ended up seeing him all throughout my school years as a therapist, and it was amazing.
Given you've started sort of, talking about your journey with this in mind, it sounds like this has played a bit of a part. Maybe, there's some clearly negative parts of it, but perhaps some positive elements with what you're doing with your life now. And if we talk about things that have formed that, looking at your pedigree, you've got a decent pedigree within your family. Your dad, Brian, he's ridden around the world. Your mum, Jeanette, she's climbed Mount Everest, if you don't mind. And your brother, Chad, the current physique world champion. And I want to know what that means.
What it means is you can't go to the beach with him in summer because you feel inadequate.
Is he all bronzed up? Is that area?
Yeah, he's bronzed up. So he competes in it's fully all natural division. So he's also a pilot with Qantas. So he's a pretty serious dude.
Absolutely the golden ticket.
Yeah. He's basically started this bodybuilding journey a few years ago. And one year he was like, yeah, I'm going to go and compete. And we sort of thought, oh, yeah, this would be a bit of a laugh. And he went and competed, and he won his first competition, and he won the open division. And they said, all right, you've got a place to go to Worlds. And so we went to Worlds, and he ended up getting second at Worlds in his first year ever competing. So he's a genetic. He's got this genetic gift. He's got like an amazing body. And anyway, the whole COVID thing happened, and no one could travel for a couple of years. Sorry. And then he went back and he went to Worlds again, and he won the thing outright, and he retired. He said, "I've done it. I'm done."
Well,
That's
Jack,
great.
we've just got a photo of Chad up here in front of us. I tell you
Oh my
what, I'm not going
gosh.
to the beach with this bloke. That's
chance.
messed up.
Yeah, he's got a good rig on him.
But so you talk about all those things, right? I mean, this isn't. I don't know if you see it, but that's not a normal family. And when I say normal, I mean that seems like it's a makeup that's kind of put you in a position to be able to do what you're doing right now. Do you see it that way?
I think so, yeah. Like definitely my dad sort of shaped what I was doing. He was always a cyclist. And I think mum was always, mums are often, I don't want to generalise, but like they're quite safe. They want you to, follow the line and, do the normal thing. But mum was always quite keen for us to go and explore whatever we wanted to explore as well. And I think actually having the support of mum and dad, who were both doing their own sort of crazy things, but them supporting us, wanting to go and do our own crazy things too, it was like a free ticket. Like we could go and do whatever we wanted, and we sort of, within reason, but we had the support behind us to go and do it. They weren't sort of saying, no, you can't go surf today because, the waves are too big. They were more like, go and get in the water and go and do it. And like having that gave us like a sense of confidence growing up.
Yeah, you touched on it briefly before, but I assume I was sort of, I guess, alluding to it with the mental health stuff as well. You don't wake up one day, or I guess you're not born an ultra cyclist. Like that's a decision that you've made to start pushing your body and mind to those sorts of things. It is the things you've spoken about with depression and obsessive compulsive stuff, and you did touch on the addiction stuff. Is that the sort of stuff that has actually pushed you to be what you are right now?
I think so. I think like my obsessive compulsive tendencies have really aided me in the ultra cycling, because I can almost use them to my advantage. So whereas before they were sort of causing me grief and like I was doing all these rituals and I now sort of apply it in a healthy way to training, for example. Like I don't miss a training session unless I'm sick. There's never a day where I wake up and I'm like, I don't really feel like training today, because I've got this sort of another voice in my head that's like, no, you're going to go and train today, because if you don't, you're actually going to feel really bad about it. You're going to get the guilt and So I sort of use it to my advantage to help me, or when times get tough out on the bike and I'm 3 days into a 5-day trip, I tap into that obsessive personality again, and it actually helps me to get through whatever I'm going through. So I almost think like going through it as a teen and into my adult years, I would have said I hate having depression, I hate living with this. Now I'm almost like I'm sort of glad that I do suffer from it, because it shaped me into who I am today for sure. And just my ability to be able to go and talk about it and feel open to talk about it with strangers. I think, if I can use it to try and help other people, then that's massive as well.
It's like the origin story of a superhero.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is he X-Man?
Wouldn't go that far, but
Well, the addiction you spoke about, how serious did that get?
That was pretty bad. So I was using like daily. Basically, when I went to uni, I studied construction management and economics, and this was back in 2007, 2008. And it was obviously the construction boom at the time. So as young lads, we were all making pretty reasonable money while we were studying, because there was a demand for us in the industry. And like my obsessive personality kicked in a negative way, in that like became partying really hard all the time. And I was using a lot of sort of recreational drugs. And basically what happened is I got home from work one day, still living at home, and laid out on my bed when I went up to my bedroom was all the gear I'd been using that I had saved in my room. So the parents had gone through the room and basically found it all. They'd realised something was going on. It was laid out on the bed, and it was super awkward, because I then had to go downstairs and sort of face them. And my dad was like, "What the fuck are you doing, mate?" And I was like, I had nothing to say. And he said to me straight up, he looked me in the eye and he said, "Unless you stop, you can basically fuck off from this family." Like he was really brutally honest with me. He said, "We don't want to be a part of your life anymore." And like, as I said, like the family was always like a really strong pillar for me growing up. And so the thought of not having them around to support me anymore, I couldn't comprehend that. And so I basically stopped cold turkey. Overnight I stopped taking anything, and I went right off the deep end into this spiral of depression because I'd been living this sort of high life on gear for so long that when I stopped, I went off into, big dark hole of despair. And that's when I went into rehab for a little while and sort of got things back on track. But it was, pretty dark times for a while there. Imagine pretty tough on the parents as well.
Do you think I'm assuming this is obvious, but you're thankful for that harsh reality from your parents, your dad especially, on reflection?
Yeah, 100%. Like my respect for him at the time was, dad's caught me, didn't really rate that. But like looking back now, the best thing that could have happened was that him and mum sort of working out what I was doing and confronting me about it. Otherwise, who knows, I'd still be using, or maybe who knows what would have happened.
Also, like, it's really impressive that, you hear stories like that and the son or daughter, whoever, can go completely opposite and be like, well, then if you don't want me, I'm out. And, it's just that's a really fortunate situation that you found yourself in, that it actually worked on you instead of pushing you away, which could have been worse.
Yeah, I think the fact that they'd supported me all throughout my youth, it was like, nah, like I could sort of like see through the haze. I was like, nah, life's more than this, like I'm 20, 21 years old and I had to reel this in a little bit. So it was, real wake up call for me.
Are you cycling?
Ground zero.
Are you cycling at this time? Like, are you racing while working, or is this sort of something that's pushed you into it?
So I gave the cycling away when I went to uni. I sort of went through that sort of phase as a bloke where I was like, I want to become a man. And like I'd always been like skinny at school because I was cycling and doing a lot of cardio and this sort of thing. And then when I finished school, I went to university, and then I was in the construction industry. That notion of actually wanting to be like a bigger bloke, and so I started going to the gym and doing more, like sort of normal sports stuff. So I wasn't cycling at all. And then it was when I came out of the rehab, my dad said to me, "Look, maybe we need to get you back on a bike." And you can imagine I didn't want much to do with that at this time. And I eventually gave in and I went for a ride with him and a couple of his mates around the river, and I fell in love with it again, like just the endorphin boost of racing around the roads. And, I fell in love with it. And that was sort of the beginning for me again. I sort of rekindled the romance with the bike and, started from there.
So you're 21 when you're in rehab, and I'm assuming around the same sort of time you start cycling properly. At what point does it become a profession, though? It must go from going for a ride with the old boys around the river to breaking world records and Guinness World Records. What's the point where it becomes serious?
Don't underestimate these old boys, all right? Some of them go all right.
Probably listening, probably going, hey, we've taught him a few lessons around.
So basically what happened was so I've got this obsessive personality. So when I do something, I always do it like 110%. And so growing up, Dad was actually always, you mentioned that he rode around the world. So every year he'd basically go and he'd do this crazy trip around a portion of the world. So one year it might have been China to Istanbul, or he'd do this portion. So we grew up with this dad that was always doing these adventures, and I sort of realised that I didn't really enjoy racing a bike. I didn't enjoy I just didn't enjoy the sort of competitive space of having to rock up, race against someone, and I didn't enjoy that. I enjoyed going and exploring. And so I started exploring on the bike, and I started doing longer and longer kilometres, and I enjoyed that. And I found like it was almost like bit of a meditation for me, and I could go and I could escape the city, and I could go up into the hills, and I loved it. And I saw that there was this race advertised in Europe called the Transcontinental Race, and it was a race that basically took you from Belgium and you rode all the way across through Europe and into Turkey, and you could go whichever way you wanted, but the first person there won. And so I signed up, and I thought, oh, this is great. Like, I'm going to go on.
You can go whichever way you want. Is that right?
Wherever you want. Pick your own roads.
There must be like one way that everyone goes there, right? The quickest way.
Well, you'd think so, but it's like, it's not. Everyone goes different ways and like has their own, like, oh no, but this mountain range is harder than this one. So like it all just splits up. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so I went and did this, and like I set off on the first night, and I was like, wow, like this is like living. Like I felt alive. Like I was like in Belgium. I hadn't really traveled to Europe much as previously, and I thought, wow, this is great. And I spent the next 10 days living on a bike, just hammering myself. And I arrived in Turkey, and my dad actually flew over to meet me. He was stoked about the whole thing as a cyclist. And I said to him, oh, that was amazing, but I don't really want to go back to work. And he's like, oh, why not? And I said, I don't like work anymore. Like I spend half my time at work looking at cycling websites, and like this trip's just shown to me, like this is the first time I've actually felt like this. I feel like I've found what I want to do. And he was like, well, just give the work away. And I was like, well, I can't really give it away. Like I need an income, Dad. And he's like, I reckon if you're passionate about this, you can make a career out of it. And so I was like, all right. So I went back to work, and I handed in my notice, and I said, look, boys, I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. I don't enjoy it. And the boss said to me, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to try and become a professional cyclist. And he said, but you don't race. And I was like, yeah, I know I don't, but I'm going to try and like forge my own path here. And so basically I was in this position where the job didn't exist, but I was sort of adamant that if I was focused and I could sort of, I could work it right, that I could create a job out of it. And so I initially started working with different tourism boards up in Asia. And basically I pitched a concept that like, I'm going to come and ride in Thailand, and I'm going to write an article and take images, and you guys are going to basically pay for my trip, and I'm going to try and promote tourism in the country. And so this sort of gave me a bit of an income, and I was doing this all throughout Asia for a while. And then I worked out that I could get sort of sponsorship, because I was then appearing in magazines and in-flight entertainment and whatnot. And so I started reaching out to different brands because I could get them an audience. And then I was like, I had this crazy idea of, like, I want to go to Taiwan. I've heard of there's this crazy mountain in Taiwan. Basically, you climb from sea level up to 3,500 meters on one road. And I said to a mate, look, let's go there and like actually film something. And he was like, oh yeah. And I was like, well, we'll go and we'll climb it 4 times. We'll do something like real extreme on the mountain. And he was like, oh, like, why would you do that? And I said, well, there's a race there. Let's go and like make use of the fact that there's already media there. I'm going to go do something crazy, and we'll document it. And then actually I'm going to talk about my mental health struggles as part of the film and see if we can like engage people outside of the cycling world. So we went and shot this film, and it was a real success, and brands were really behind it, the whole sort of venture in cycling, and being open and honest about the mental health struggles. And basically from there, I've sort of grown it into a career where I create film content, and I basically pick records of things that I'm going to break, and I document them as films. And over the last probably 8 years now, that's how I've been living.
That is crazy.
And it's just sort of grown.
That is crazy. I mean, a lot of questions out of that for mine, but if we go back to making that decision, and 1-year-old man saying, well, if you're passionate enough, you can kind of manifest it effectively. You must have had some tough times to start with, though. So you're talking about going through Asia and hitting up tourist boards. I can't imagine if that's reciprocal. Like they go, oh, okay, no worries, Jack Thompson, not too easy, mate. You've done nothing. Come and ride, whatever country it is. Like, it must have been brutal to start with.
There was definitely time. Like, to be honest, the tourism stuff was actually really good. Like, there was no like bad times with the tourism. I will say one time in China I was arrested. So they thought I was a spy on the Tibetan border, and like literally in the middle of China. And I ended up in like a lockup in China for a little while. And that's probably a story for another potty, but
No. It's a story for right now. You don't get to move on from that here, mate.
Drop that on
You
us.
can't just be dropping, I spent a bit of time locked up in China. We'll speak later about that.
So basically what happened, right, I was riding from central China down into Laos. And like I was alone, but I was like close to the Tibetan border. And in China, every night when you check into a hotel, they basically like keep a track of your passport, where you've been. They keep a track of where you're at as a foreigner. And I arrived in this one town. I forget the name of it now, but it was like an ancient city. And so I'd arrived there quite early. I'd got up early and I'd ridden there, and I wanted to go and have a bit of a look around. And when I got there, the lady at the hotel, it was like she knew I was coming even though I hadn't booked. And she said, "Oh, we're going to take you down to the police station because you've got to check in." And like, you got to imagine this is all done on translation. It's like, I'm not talking Chinese, I'm talking English. So it's all a bit broken. So I've gone down to the local police station, and they've got me, and they've sort of grabbed me, and I'm wearing like a Nike singlet and a little pair of running shorts, because that's the only clothes that I take when I'm doing like a multi-day trip. I'm bare bones. And they've put me into a little cell, and sort of jabbering to me in Chinese, and I'm obviously not understanding. And because I'm in this little concrete sort of room, my phone's not working, so I've got no reception. I can't translate anything. And I was really lucky because the police chief, his wife, happened to be an English teacher at a school nearby, and so he got her on the phone, on his phone. She was asking me, like, "What are you doing here? You know you've got the camera." Like, and I was like, "I'm literally just riding from central China to Laos. I'm here, like, just it's essentially a holiday. I'm not working. I'm not doing anything dodgy." And eventually they let me off. And so I'd been interrogated for a couple of hours there. And I think the chief of police felt bad, right? And so as I got out of the cell, he's written to me on his phone. I've written to him first. I said, like, "Where can I get food? Because at this stage, I'm starving." And he's written back to his phone, like, "Would you like to join me for dinner?" And I was like, he's just arrested me. Now he's invited me for dinner. So this is where the story gets, like, super crazy. So I said, okay, like, when in Rome, when in China. So I'm sitting in the police station, and this has all happened quite quickly. It's the end of the day. A four-wheel drive's rocked up right out the front. He sort of signalled for me to go and jump in the back seat. And I get in the back seat, and I'm the only one in there. And there's these two boxes, right? So, like, the boxes are sort of yay big, and they're wrapped heavily in tape. And suddenly, like, my mind just, like, my stomach started to sink. I was like, all right, so they've not been able to get me on, like, a spy charge. They're going to try and dupe me up here as, like, a drug trafficker. So, like, we're literally hammering around the back streets of China in the city, and I'm like, fuck, what's going on here? And we get down this little alleyway, and, like, the car stops, and there's this little red door. I can still picture it. And he, like, signals for me to get out of the car and, like, to grab the packets. And I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm touching those packets because I don't want my fingerprints on them. Like, I'd already, like, done the full CSI scan of the situation. And anyway, so I, like, opened the door for him to, like, get the stuff out of the car and go upstairs. So he's grabbed them, gone upstairs. We've walked up the stairs, and at the top there's, like, this group of people sitting around a table eating dinner. I was like, this is weird. Anyway, he started ripping open the boxes, and I'm like, fuck, I'm waiting for everything just to go everywhere. And he's pulled out 2 6-packs of Belgian beers.
Oh.
And he's written into his app, in China we prefer the Belgian beers to the Chinese beers. So we ended up having dinner and going to karaoke together.
Oh, that is epic.
That's good.
It was such a loose story.
Tell me your best mates with the Chinese chief of police now.
Yeah, I did. I had him as a contact save, but I've lost him. I've, like, tried to find him so many times. I don't have him in there.
Oh, that is an epic story. Honestly, we probably both, Dan and I, didn't know what to expect, with the chat, but we're like, that's epic. But we're definitely keen to talk about some of the sort of world beating stuff that you've been able to do. So you spoke about your first ultra cycling event, which you finished 30th at. So you weren't very good, I mean, unless there was 300.
Nah.
You weren't getting your.
I was a bit of a bunter.
But you've improved clearly because you've started doing things that people haven't done ever in the world. What's your first sort of world-beating thing that you knock off? Is it the Everesting project, or was it something before that?
Nah, so it was off the back of COVID. I've been stuck in Spain, and I had to think of a project that I was going to do in Spain. I couldn't leave Spain, and I'd seen that this guy had broken the 7-day most kilometres ridden world record. And I think he'd done 3,200 kilometres or something. And I did the maths, and I was like, I reckon I could do 500 kilometres a day for a week, and that'd give me a new world record. So I basically applied with Guinness World Records and said that I was going to try and break the record. And then I picked what I thought was the flattest part of Spain, which wasn't actually very flat. And we actually went and spent 7 days riding loops around a not so flat countryside, and I managed to break that record. That was back in 2020 now, I guess.
Yeah, 2020 that was. So most kilometres ridden unsupported in a week. So 500 kilometres a day, like, what's that look like? Give it to normal people like Dan and I, people listening. Like,
all right, let's put it into perspective for Perth people, right? So that's like you jump on your bike in Perth City and you ride down to just past Busselton, and then you turn around and ride back.
Every day.
Every day.
That's 500k. So doing that every day, yeah.
How long is that taking you?
So that's like averaging. That's probably like on the bike 16 to 18 hours a day. And then you've got to factor in, like, you obviously got to stop somewhere in there and eat. Generally, something goes wrong each day, so you've got to factor that in. And then you've got to obviously like sleep and have dinner. So I was operating on about 3 or 4 hours sleep a night.
So when it says unsupported, does that mean you did it by yourself, or did you have people riding with you?
Nah, by yourself. So it's all done alone. Yeah, you're sort of at one with your own mind there. It's more of a mental game than a physical game, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I can imagine. Talk to me about that then. Well, what?
So it's like,
what happens in your mind? What happens in your mind when you're doing that?
Like, everything happens in your mind. You've just got so much time to think, right? You've got so much time alone, and you're like, for this particular one, you're actually somewhere that's quite remote, because you're trying to pick somewhere that doesn't have a lot of traffic, doesn't have a lot of cars, doesn't have a lot of hills. So you're basically at one with your. It's like riding across the Nullarbor, and it's sort of, that's where a lot of, like, I've sort of developed a lot of my mental health sort of tools through the actual riding of the bike. So it's like, how do I shut off the chatter? How do I work through that difficult time and get to the next little milestone? And for me, I use like little rewards. So it's like, for example, music. I could listen to music all day long if I wanted to. Like a couple of good house mixes, a couple of good, 94.5 mixes from back in the day. Like I can listen to music all day. Fred Boddicker and the bunch. But I use music as a reward, right? So I'll say to myself, all right, I'm going to do 100 kilometers, and then I'm going to put music in, and then I'll listen to music for 50 kilometers, but then I put it away, and then it's like, all right, I've got to ride another 100 kilometers before I can put that music back in. And it's these little sort of like rewards that I use with myself to get me to that next little period. I also do things like I use like different food, like, all right, for this 100 kilometers, I'm going to eat this, this, and this. And then for the next 100, so it's basically like breaking things down into smaller and smaller goals, smaller chunks, so that you feel like you're constantly achieving something. And that for me, like even now, like in daily life, that's something I use like every day. Like it's a glass of water as soon as I wake up in the morning before I have a coffee. and I've got to do my stretching before I have the coffee. So I'm like forcing myself to do these things, and I'm ticking them off a list, and that's my way of being productive. And I'll do the same thing on the bike. It's like I've got to get to 100, then I put the music in, then I'm going to do 50, and then I'm going to do another 100. So there's 250 kilometers without actually sort of thinking about it. But if you just looked at it as a 500-kilometer ride, that's really hard to deal with mentally. You've got to break it down into small chunks, and that's how I deal with them. Small chunks.
Busy.
Wow, small chunks. But it's reward based as well, right? And whether or not it's physical or mental, the reward, you're giving yourself a reward for doing something every time.
Yeah, I swear by it. Like, doesn't always have to be like a reward. Like, people often think of rewards as it's something that's like, oh, I've eaten well all week, so this week I'm going to go and have McDonald's. I don't necessarily think of a reward like that. Like, a reward can be something like the music, or like at night time turning on the TV once you've done the washing. Like, it's little things that you enjoy doing. They don't necessarily have to be like guilty pleasures, if you know what I mean.
So when you're riding for that many days and you get to that final day, do you just still have to do that average amount that you'd sort of scheduled, or did you have to make up time? How did that go when you finished it?
So I'd actually built up excess during the week, so I'd done a little bit extra each day because I'd actually been nervous about weather. And so so the first day I did like 550 kilometers. The second was 550 as well. So I built up this buffer. And then what was actually really hard was on the final day, like I knew I had to do less. And because of that, it was almost harder. I was like, oh, like I can be a bit like slack with it and, like let my foot off the steam a little bit. And anyway, like I got to the point where I'd broken the old record and I was like, I'm just going to stop here. Like I've done it. And it was like the people that were there with me, like filming, and they're like, no, you hit that 3,500. So we ended up hitting the 3,500, and I still had 12 hours still to ride. And I was like, nah, I'm done now. Like, let's go. I wanted to go and celebrate with these people. And it's probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. I wish that I'd kept riding till the end, because the record ended up going and getting broken by somebody that rode to the end. And I look back at them, like I learned from that now, like I'll never do it again. But like looking back, I kicked myself, like I should have kept riding.
What happens once you break a Guinness World Record? Are you in some sort of club? Do you get
a plaque?
Yeah, plaque. Do you get invited to like a special room that no one else has been in?
Here we go. He's got it on.
Let's have a look.
Yeah. He's just pulling out.
Boys, you become officially amazing.
Yeah, for those just listening and not watching, Jack has just held up a piece of paper, I can only assume, that says you are officially amazing.
That's good.
So basically you get your certificate, and then there's no guarantees, but like that book that Santa always used to bring you for Christmas, the big one that goes under the tree.
Best.
You basically you run the chance of getting into that book. So my biggest claim to fame was that I actually made that book. So my mum bought like 5 or 6 copies of it, and they're probably collecting dust somewhere at home.
That's good.
But I'm in the book.
Jeanette's now a distributor of the Guinness World Record.
Aussie distributor.
Oh, that's good. Is it hard? Was that specific Guinness World Record you set? Was that hard? You make it sound easy.
Yeah, it was hard. That was like a week of proper graft, like actually hitting and like the thing with Guinness, right, is like they stipulate it's a business, right? So you've got to pay to actually even register. It's quite expensive. But then they set the rules. So we basically had to film every single hour I was riding. Somebody had to record to the camera, hi there, my name's da-da-da-da, it's Tuesday, 17th of August, turn the camera around, this is Jack Thompson, he's now riding along this road. So every hour you've got to do this 3-minute video, but then you've also got to keep a logbook. So like every hour, how many kilometers I've done, what the time is, da-da-da. It's super onerous to actually do it. And once I did that one, I said, I'm not registering them with Guinness anymore, because it adds like an admin element to everything that's just not really needed, and it costs you money. Like we've done the one, like that's enough.
I think people that will be listening along would attribute cycling to the Tour de France, or at least I'm no cyclist genius, but I love watching the Tour. You said earlier that you've never really loved the competitive element of racing against other people, but racing against yourself. Was racing in the Tour ever an option, or you done anything similar to those?
I'd never, like, obviously, like, as a little triathlete, like way back when, like that the notion of riding the Tour was always a bit of a dream, but like it was a long shot. But I had this project idea, and it was like, I want to go and ride the Tour de France, but I want to do it in my own way. And while the Tour is a 3-week race, I had this idea that, look, I want to go and ride it in 10 days. So in 2021, we had this project called The Amazing Chase. And basically what I did was I didn't get one of these, but it was an amazing chase. We gave the Tour de France a 10-day head start. So they left from wherever they left, I forget the name of the town where they left that year. They left. 10 days later, I left from the same town, and I rode the entire Tour de France. But I basically did the 2 stages every day as opposed to the 1 stage a day. And so we did the Tour de France in 10 days and arrived in Paris before the peloton got there. So, like, you know, like, I like designing my own little things and then going about doing them. And this was one of them. It's like a bit of a creative outlet.
I mean, these are the best cyclists in the world, and you thought, I'll just give them a 10-day head start, no worries. Did you actually pass them? Was there a time you passed them, or was it overnight that you did that?
So it was the rest day in Andorra. So they were having the rest day, and that was the day that I sort of essentially passed them. And it was pretty good because, like, being here, I got like mates that ride. Like, where I live is sort of like the hub of cycling worldwide. So there's 200 professionals live in sort of the city that I'm in. So, like, we're all sort of mates, and like a couple of the lads came out and like they rode with me the day that I was coming through. So that was pretty cool. That they bought into the idea. Like, there's a mutual respect between us, and that was really cool actually for them to sort of come and be a part of it.
I don't know why I'm thinking of Mr. Bean, but like Mr. Bean, like going past, like giving the double birds as he rides past the hotel. I'm just imagining himself like giving a little secret finger as he walks past the hotel. Like, sucked in, motherfucker.
Did you have anyone running next to you? You know, that's a big thing with the two other guys with the signs and stuff like that.
You know what? What was actually sick was when I passed the sort of peloton, so to speak. So they were in Andorra. But you got to imagine, like, the Tour is a circus, so there's people like camping roadside for like days on end before the Tour comes through because they want to see it. So when I actually went past them that afternoon, I had to do my second stage for the day, and I set off, and all the roads were closed, and all of the punters that were there to watch the Tour the following day were already on the roadside, so they were camping there, ready for the next day's stage. So, like, I had my own little private, almost like tour experience where there was like people like cheering as I was going through, and it was a shame because it was like the afternoon and it was sort of getting into nighttime. But it was sick, like people coming out. I got this one really good image of this French guy running next to me with like a beret on, and he's like cheering, and yeah, it was sick. Like, great experience.
That's epic. So it was called The Amazing Chase, and I'm assuming we can watch this online. I'm assuming you're YouTube.
Yeah, that one's on YouTube. Yeah.
Amazing Chase. How long did it take you to come up with that name?
Like, we had like a full committee to come up with it.
That's
because there's like, obviously, like with these things, there's like sponsors behind them, and like it's not just sort of me coming up with an idea and going and doing it. Like there's a bit of money that has to come in to make it happen. So like there's like input from brands and this sort of thing. So yeah, there was like a bit of a committee, and I imagine there was 1 or 2 meetings around the name, and that's what we came up with.
So not only are you doing these epic rides around the world, and we've heard the journey there, but you are, you know, there is a big part of it is about the mental health journey you've been on too, and you've been able to raise money along the way as well. One of those being the 52 Everestings. which you can explain to people what that means. I mean, it sounds hard.
So basically, an Everest on a bike, or like for those that run as well, it's the same concept. Like an Everest as a mountain, the highest mountain on Earth, 8,848 meters in elevation. So this concept of Everesting, right, is you pick one climb, one hill, one mountain, whatever it may be, and you basically ride or run up it however many times it takes to hit the equivalent height of Mount Everest. So if the mountain that you were climbing up was 4,424 meters, you would do it twice. But if the mountain's 100 meters, you might do it 84 times or 88 times or whatever it is. So it's the cumulative Everest, cumulative elevation. So yeah, within cycling, it's a big thing. You pick a mountain, you go and climb it up, down, up, down, up, down until you hit that height of Everest. And yeah, it generally takes anywhere from, like a standard Everest might take from 12 to 16 hours to do one, depending on your
So in
fitness level.
2022,
The record's 8, I think.
you did.
I'm sure there's people that take that.
You did 52 Everestings in 1 year. Your goal was to do over 1 million meters in a calendar year, which you did, and you raised over 160,000 Australian dollars for mental health charities. Does that rank quite high in pride in things you've done?
Yeah, that's the highest. So we actually raised $500,000 for the 3 charities. So that one was big for me, like on a personal level, because it was actually really hard, but also like as far as like an achievement or like a career achievement goes, like actually being able to help that many other people, like that's my passion, you know, like I love riding the bike, but I feel like my greater purpose is actually in trying to help other people. And so like to be able to combine that riding the bike and actually making a difference to other people, definitely is, my sort of proudest moment as an athlete.
Have you had many first-hand experiences of helping people? You're very open with how you speak about your mental and your journey from that sense growing up. We've seen what you can do from a mental and physical element cycling. Do you get to meet, speak, or otherwise hear from people that you are helping?
Yeah, I do actually, and like I think while sometimes I have a love-hate relationship with like social media. Like I don't necessarily love posting everything on there. It's actually been like a really powerful way for me to get feedback from other people, or for people to be able to reach out and say, hey, look, like that's made a massive difference in my life. Like I just want to thank you for that. But I also do like, I really enjoy the public speaking stuff. We've just done some public speaking here in Spain with some sports psychology students around the power of having a dream, and like I love that stuff. We do some like corporate stuff, chatting with like brands and businesses around like the power of mental health in the workplace and the importance of exercise. And I'd say like once the cycling sort of comes to a point where I can no longer officially be amazing, then like I want to explore, you know, the public speaking side of things more seriously. Like I say that's where I'd like to go.
Because you've been solo on a lot of this sort of stuff, do you sometimes become quite insular? Like the mental drive you'd have to be able to plug yourself into and the mode you've got to go into to do this, does it become quite an insular sport that you're participating in?
Sorry, when you say insular, you mean like...
Well, solitary and insular being, you know, I know they don't mean the same things, but it's certainly a solitary sport.
Lonely?
Yeah, lonely. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Yeah, at times it's definitely lonely. Like, yeah. I don't mind, like, the time alone. I quite enjoy it. Like, it's therapy for me. But, yeah, at times, especially when it's, like, a big training block and you're out there 3-4 days, 10 hours a day, that does get pretty lonely. Or like if it's an event like the 7-day world record, like it's a lot of time alone. But I think as well, like I've got a support team behind me. So it's like, while there's not somebody riding with me, there might be a chef at the house, there might be a physio, there might be, you know, somebody helping with logistics. And it's never just me breaking a record. It's like I've got these people around me that actually make it happen that don't get seen. There's a lot of these behind the scenes people, as there are like in the footy scene. You've got your coaches and your physios and things. Like these are the guys and girls that actually make it happen. And I think for that reason, while it is a solo sport, I do still feel like I have like a real team around me, and I think that's I enjoy having that around me.
I know one man who'll be listening to this, Dan, Timmy Franklin.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of Timmy Franklin at all, Jack. Have you heard that name before?
No.
You have now. Tim, who we've had on the podcast, he is currently a big listener of BackChat, but he's currently running around the world. So Tim Franklin, he's on about day
360.
Yeah, 360. He's running about 50 to 60 kilometres a day. And he's getting into Perth pretty soon.
Early next year, I think.
Yeah, so he is running the globe. I think only 5 people ever have done this, and he's trying to break the world record for it. And I thought we'd just give him a quick shout out. I mean, you got you lunatics running around, riding around. It's hectic.
Keep running, Timmy. Keep running, mate.
Yes. What's next, mate? You've done some crazy things, but I know you're headed back to Perth shortly. Tell us about what's up on the agenda.
So actually, I'm flying back to Perth this Friday for what is a pretty cool event. So it's one we've been working on for a little while now. And the event name itself is Mundabitty Dreaming. So it's a bit of it's a cool project because there's the record attempt, which is trying to ride as fast as I can from Perth down to Albany along the Mundabitty Trail, taking in the fact that it's all on Indigenous land and telling that story as part of the film. But also the more philanthropic component, which I'm really excited about, is in partnership with IKEA, which is a mental health digital platform that promotes connected wellbeing. And we're actually visiting a series of schools along the way north, chatting with around 5,000 kids around the power of exercise, the power of riding bikes, and basically just showcasing that, depression exists within society, and that's okay. It's just a matter of finding the support and the people around you to support you. So, yeah, really, really looking forward to this one. Back on home soil, obviously, and giving back to the WA community will be great.
So this is a world record attempt. The previous record, the existing record, 2 days, 17 hours and 22 minutes. How are you going to go about this? Is it a non-stop ride? Is it getting some sleep in?
I'd say it'll be non-stop, to be honest. I'll take a little, like a sleeping, it's not a sleeping bag, it's like like a sack. I'll take a sack that I'll sleep in. But I'll try not to sleep for this one. So I'll be due a few hours of shut-eye when I arrive in Albany. But I mean, it's 2 days, 2 and a bit days without sleep. It all depends on what the weather's like. Like, depends how hot it is, depends on the wind conditions. Like, you never know. So you're better off to take something to sleep in just in case. You don't want to you don't want to be out in the bush with nothing.
How do you prepare for this physically? Because you're obviously still just continuing. It's not like you're just always riding a bike, but do you have to do something differently for getting ready for this sort of ride?
Yeah, so this one, like typically in a week, I'll train, like a normal week for me is 25 to 30 hours of riding. When I do these like particular events, I'll then throw in like a couple of real big weeks in there. So it might be a 40 or a 50-hour week where it's more just getting used to being on a bike for that period of time. And a lot of it actually comes down to the equipment that you're using. So like testing, how does the bike feel with this bag on it, with this sort of weight distribution? It's not on the road, so it's off-road. It's on that pea gravel, which Perth and the southwest is sort of notorious for. It's quite slippery sort of ground. So you've got to have your wits about you around how the bike's set up. And so I've spent like a good period of time now just making sure I've got all the right equipment, working on like a fueling strategy, like how am I going to eat, how much am I going to eat, when am I going to refuel, planning like where are the water stops. There's a whole lot of logistics that goes into sort of making these things happen. The physical one of actually riding the bike, like for me, that's almost like the easy part. It's the part I enjoy. then looking at the trail, looking at what time does this shop open and what time am I going to get there, that feels more like homework. But it is what it is. It's all part of it.
So for those listening along that might be in Albany or WA surrounds, you're going to kick off on Friday the 24th of November. Early start, not that early though, 5:30.
Yeah, I thought it would have been earlier, but that's
all right. He's not going to sleep for 2 days. Getting in to Albany on the 26th of November. So hoping for a bit of a guard of honour or something like that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, if you're down in Albany, come on down and cheer a haggard man through the finishing line.
How do you celebrate these sorts of things? Because, like, are you having a beer, or if you have like one drip of alcohol, are you completely spent? How does that work?
I actually don't drink. So ever since I sort of came out of rehab, like I don't touch alcohol anymore. But like I love like alcohol-free frothies. Like there's a great selection over here. Like Shelter Brewing's getting behind this one and throwing in some of their ales. So yeah, like I'll grab a Shelter Brewing 0.0 and get stuck into that, and then probably try and find the nearest chicken party.
I don't know if Jack's fucking with us or not.
I don't think he is.
Is Shelter getting behind this?
Yeah.
Mate, Shelter is the beer of choice of the BackChat studios.
Sponsors.
This is unbelievable.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, mate. Get on.
No way.
We're the BackChat Shelter ale right here. Look at these
you get your own ales. How good is that?
Yeah.
That is correct. Well, I mean, it's unsurprising. I mean, isn't it?
No, they do great things.
No, it's unsurprising that Shelter are supporting
of
Jack.
course.
I mean, both great people. So make sure we get around this. It sounds like the stuff with the kids post could I mean, given that what we've just been through with some of the things you've done from an endurance and ultra side of things, the 2 days doesn't seem. I mean, 2 days. You just said you get to the 7-day thing. It sounds like the follow-ups with the schools, imparting that sort of knowledge, is a big part of this.
Yeah, for me, like that's what I'm really excited about. Like the ride, I'm excited. Don't get me wrong, but like the piece afterwards is the more important piece, and that's been like what all the hard work sort of the last couple of months on the early Zoom calls with the team in Australia and like bringing that to life. There's a real team around that, and so like, a lot of them I haven't met before. Like they're people I've just been dealing with online. So to actually get back, properly meet the team, and actually be able to go and execute the philanthropic component with the kids, and I think especially like leading into Christmas, it's quite an exciting sort of time of the year for kids. Getting back and seeing them, the school year sort of about to end, they're about to go on holidays. It almost like brings back memories of me being a school kid and looking forward to going on the school holidays. So I'm like, there's a bit of a buzz around that in itself.
We got a little bit more to get through, but a couple of questions I've got. You clearly shaved down for the event or something. I've seen some photos with a big beard and longish hair. Are you in competition mode right now?
So like we went to Italy on a little getaway a few weeks ago, like end of the sort of like tourism season here. We thought, let's go to Italy and just like let the hair down, so to speak. And I actually saw like a couple of Italian dudes rocking the bald head, and I was like, that's actually a pretty good look. And I thought, I'm going to give it a go. So like I've actually got quite thick hair, and I was like, I'm just going to shave it. So I did the shave. I did the number 4, and then I was like, the obsessive personality kicked in, and I reckon 4's not short enough. Let's go with 0. So I went to 0, and I don't actually mind the look. I need to get a bit of a tan, so hopefully being back in Perth will help with the tan. But I guess it's like you could say it's a little faster.
Yeah, it looks good.
It does. Like we haven't really met before, so seeing you with the bald head, it just looks normal. It doesn't look like, that looks like a weird thing to do.
Okay, it's a better reaction than my partner gave me.
I'm sure Jack's jumped on the BackChat to get a bit of feedback on his shaved head as well. I mean, you told the China border story, but is there any stories that jump off the page for you, crazy things that have happened on the road? I assume you've seen some things, and maybe some of those things only you know and haven't been able to share them. But is there any just crazy stories that have happened while you've been breaking these records on the road out riding?
Oh, one comes to mind actually, and it's kind of fitting because it was back in Oz. So I forget what year it was now. I rode from Perth across the Nullarbor to Adelaide. There was a bike race in Adelaide, the Tour Down Under, in January. And I thought, I'm going to ride over from Perth to the Tour Down Under. And stupid idea to drive it, even more stupid idea to ride it because there's just nothing out there. And it's hot in January, like incredibly hot. Anyway, one day I'd crossed the border into South Australia, I think. Yeah, I'd crossed the border. And anyway, I'd stopped on the side of the road to have a drink or something. I was doing something, and a car pulled up, and it was like an old Honda Ute or something, like a real old, sort of like clapped out Ute. And there were two young guys in there, and they had like sort of like wooden box on the top of the car, which I didn't think much of at the time. But they said to me, "Oh, you all right, mate?" And I was like, "Yeah, all good. Just like taking a breather or whatever I was doing." And they said, "Oh, do you need anything?" And like I was like, "Yeah, have you got a can of Coke or something?" And they were like, no, we don't have any Coke, but we've got some Ribena. And I was like, I'm expecting like a little juice box, right? Like your little kid's lunchbox thing. And they pulled out this like 2-litre bottle with like a little bit of Ribena in the bottom. And suddenly it started like going through my head, like, what's going on here? This is a bit of a weird situation. They've offered me this fucking dregs of Ribena. And anyway, we were talking and they were saying, "Oh, we're going over to," I was like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you driving over?" And the story didn't really add up why they were heading east. And I started getting like real funny feelings, like are they trying to like kidnap me or do something here? And like this wooden box on the top of the car, I started picturing as my coffin. I was like, what's in that box? Am I going to end up in there?
Trying to allow border crossing type areas.
Yeah.
South Australia, Western Australia, very similar scenes.
So for any backpackers coming over to Oz, it's really safe. So anyway, they gave me this Ribena, and I said, I'll have this up the road as a bit of a treat. And I took off. Anyway, I was riding for ages, and they didn't come past me. And I was just thinking the whole time, like, these guys are surely waiting for me to like have this Ribena, and then they're going to like, find me roadside. There's some sort of poison in it. And maybe this is me hallucinating, like as I'm riding across the desert. Maybe it's not. Anyway, they ended up coming like roaring past in the car, and I ended up getting the Ribena and just hurling it into the side off the side of the road. But I was convinced they were trying to basically like drug me and do something with me. But again, maybe it was the hallucinations or the fact that I was in Oz in the middle of summer.
What was in the wooden box?
I got no idea.
A body, I assume.
A body, someone else's body. I don't know. It was scary.
That's bloody good, mate. Now, very, very good luck for your big trip down the Mundabiddi Trail. We're going to be following along. We'd love to chat to you post that, see how you go, get you on the show. Maybe while you're doing a bit of a trek through the schools and doing that side of things, we'd love to. Well, maybe we can get you into the studio here if you want to be here.
Are you coming back to Perth after the Albany trek?
Yeah, I'll be back in Perth for a couple of days, and then I'm actually coming back I head back to Spain for 2 weeks, and then I'm back in December for a month. Now,
we don't let you off easy here. We are pretty much towards the back end of the potty, but it's time for social media, not social media, social media. Just like the Amazing Chase, we spent years coming up with this name. Social media, brought to you from the people, by the people. This is questions from our audience. You've heard enough from Dan and I. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Sean Jasper.
Do you have any Australian ultra rides planned in the future? Maybe?
Well, Sean.
Yeah.
Well, there's one next week that I'm really looking forward to.
Very good.
So there's, that'd be the main one. That's the big one in Oz.
Life by Knox.
Do you ever get bored of cardio?
I actually enjoy it, I love the bike. I enjoy surfing. I go to the gym a little bit in winter, but I'm not much of a gym junkie. I'm nothing like my brother.
Yeah, look, do yourself a favour and just look up Chad Thompson, if you just, I don't know, sitting along and listening to this, and you will be absolutely shocked. Jam _ double 89. This is a good question, actually.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
I'd have to say the T-Rex.
Really? Not inventive. That's a
Yeah.
bit boring.
Boring answer, to be honest. Sorry.
Maybe the pterodactyl.
Yeah, now we're talking.
Too many to choose from.
Yeah, we like that. Doug _ we've both got kids as well, Dan,
Yeah.
so that's probably
Mine's
better.
the Diplodocus.
Really?
Yeah, long neck.
I couldn't go past the Parasol office, but we'll keep going. Doug _ Wilson.
What's your opinions on e-bikes? And also, what's your favorite bike in the stable?
E-bikes, I love them. I reckon they get more people riding bikes. We actually did a project on e-bikes a couple of months back where we took them and we basically rode to the highest peak in the Pyrenees and then climbed it on foot. But we did it on an e-bike to tell a climate change story. So I'm all about it.
Great.
And then my favourite bike in the stable, I've got a Specialized Roubaix SL8. It's like a British racing green. I love it. It's fast. I actually got a vintage bike as well that I enjoy, a Specialized Rockhopper.
Do you ride the vintage bike, or is it just to look at?
Nah, I ride it, and to be honest, I get more people commenting on that vintage bike when I ride it than I do when I ride the expensive ones. I'm more scared about the vintage one getting stolen than the expensive ones.
Cycling, there's some serious expenses in cycling, isn't there? I mean, the bikes, the equipment, it's expensive.
Yeah, that's one of the problems. It's like a barrier to entry for a lot of people, actually getting the stuff. So it's a shame. There are brands that do cheaper stuff. It doesn't matter what you're riding. Just get out and ride. Bikes are fun. I rate it.
I'll stay on my Malvern Star. Thank you very much.
Oh, is that right? Tooling _ Yeah, correct. I don't know what this means.
What's your FTP?
So FTP is so you got functional threshold power. So basically the power you can hold on a bike for an hour.
Right.
All right. And my FTP is, I'm not going to say.
What, does that mean it's bad or good?
No. My FTP is actually quite low. So my FTP is around 385. But I weigh, I'm around 78 kilos. So for someone riding the Tour de France, for example, if we did a quick calc, so it's watts per kilo. So if I said I'm 78 and my FTP is 385 divided by 78 is 4.9 watts a kilo. All right. If we look at someone like Tadej Pogacar, or Jonas Vingegaard wins the Tour, their FTP, so if they were my weight, their FTP would be about 550 watts. So they're essentially Ferraris. I'm a big cat tractor.
It's the tractor. That's your nickname.
Tractor.
We got your nickname, the tractor. Jack the Tractor Thompson. I'm sorry. Stop the podcast. Wipe everything else. Jack the Tractor Thompson coming to a city near you.
I can already see the shelter brewing with the little tractor on it.
Yeah.
Well, fuck me. Do we need to do anything else?
No.
How much can we give? I don't know how much more we can give. Brady Hoff fan page, shout out.
What's your biggest inspiration?
Biggest inspiration is probably outside of cycling, to be honest. I love looking at the surfing world, looking at the skiing world. Probably somebody like John Olsen, who's basically made a career. He was an extreme skier and he's turned his career into more documenting what he does outside of his skiing life. I'm all about people that show what's going on behind the scenes. So I reckon John Olsen's a pretty good guy to look at.
Like it. Jazz 345.
Do you follow AFL whilst overseas? Can't speak.
You know what? And this is a bit embarrassing. We grew up watching rugby. So Dad was always a rugby man. So footy wasn't always a big thing in our house. But in saying that, because I'm chatting with an ex-West Coast Eagles player, I'd have to say West Coast is probably my favourite team.
Great.
And Dan Schofield, probably my favourite all-time player.
Great.
Dan, you probably, I would say, the West Coast thing would actually tickle Dan's fancy a little bit more, don't you think?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm a West Coast fan.
And you're a nuffy. You're
Yeah,
proper nuffy.
but it's been a rough trot for a little while. So try not to talk about it too much.
Last one, the Eggman.
How do you like your eggs? Sincerely, the Eggman.
I like them. I don't know how you call it. Like I like fried them, but I cook them with the lid on the pan so that it's not super runny. I've got a weird thing with eggs. They make me feel a bit sick if they're too runny.
It goes a bit pink on
like
the yolk.
I don't like it. Yeah, they've got to be cooked, the yolks.
So is it like sunny side up, but it's like...
Then the steam sort of like cooks the top a bit, so it's not left with like, you know how the yolk is runny, but then the white stays runny if you don't cook it long enough. I know what you're talking about.
Are you the Eggman? Focus question.
We fucking found him. That's very good. Now, Jack, we know you do some nice stuff in social media and YouTube land. Can you just point people in the right direction, how they find some of your stuff, have been listening along and found it interesting?
Sure. Social media is Jack Ultra-Cyclist. The same on YouTube, Jack Ultra-Cyclist. So
while you're there, you may as well jump on BackChat Studios YouTube page as well. Get over there. Subscribe to us both while you're doing your best work. BackChat _. BackChatstudios.com.au. You can find all of our stuff. And a big thank you to all our sponsors and supporters. Shelter, they get a little mention off the top. Of course, Fleet Network powering the podcast this year. Swimply, Whippersnapper Whiskey, Margaret River Roasting Co., Bluebet, Shelter Brewing Co., Lidl Cameras, and Mumba Digital. Our very good friends at ID Athletic as well. Yes, we have a long list of sponsors. Maybe, Jack, you could beat us. I don't know. Maybe you could go through some of your sponsors as well if you like. Mate, it's been a pleasure having you on the pod. We do appreciate you getting up nice and early in Spain, and good luck when you get back here in Perth, mate.
Thanks a lot, boys. Looking forward to chatting when this is all done and sharing a shelter ale with you.